when I studied NLP, I realized that that was the umbrella under which everything I'd ever done sat, because all of it is about communication skills. And coaching, as much as anything else, is about communication skills. It's about understanding other people and helping people find their solutions using their map of the world, not ours. Because if I'm a coach and I give advice, for example, I say, this is what I would do in your situation, they're not in my situation. They operate in their world, and whatever we come up with has to work in their world. So it's no good me imposing anything, it won't work. So it has to be something that operates in the client's map of the world. And this is why, from our training, for coach training, we specialize very much in, first of all, understanding people. How do people think? How do people make understandings? How do they make connections? And then we look at coaching models, because a model is only as good, because a model is a tool. And if anybody here do DIY? How many people in this room do DIY? Not many. I've put my hand up as well. A tool is only as good as the person using the tool. So tools, for tool's sake, are a little bit like somebody who has no experience with that tool and somebody who is greatly skilled with that tool. So what we do is we focus on understanding how people think, how people create their maps of the world, and then we use the tools so that we get the most out of those tools, so that the tools are meaningful, so that people don't just pick up tools out of books or manuals and just apply them, because that's only half of the story. The rest of it is what's happening with that individual, how is that individual changing, how is their map of the world changing, and that's what makes a tool powerful. A tool on its own can be fantastic, but it can also not really go very far, and certainly not reach the depths that it's designed to reach. So that's the part of the journey that we're on today. It's very much the philosophy of where we come from as a coach training company.
I'm responsible for many people in my organisation, and just want to understand from this how can it be more effective for me, but also more effective for them as well.
Yeah, it's a great word that you've used there, responsible for. Often where people, for example, give advice, if you give advice to people, they'll keep coming back to you for advice. Also, when you give advice to people, you're not really creating the neural pathways of them creating their own ways of doing things. So how do you really help people? One of the things is you want people to be responsible for themselves. So coaching is about self-development. The last thing you want as a coach is to build dependency, where your client is dependent on you. Same with the workforce, same with relationships generally, depending on your intention, of course. Because what you want is to have people develop their own ways of finding solutions to issues that they come across. And if you think, if you're a manager, for example, the difference that would make to you if people didn't keep coming to you for answers, if they were able to do things off their own bat, what difference that would make just in terms of time. So coaching is an approach, it's not the approach, it's an approach. So you have consulting, you have mentoring, you have coaching. They're all excellent in their own context, and they all have different intentions. So depending on how you mix those things, that will depend on how effective you're being with that particular team and how that team develops. So there's a ton of stuff in coaching, because coaching really is about talent development. Because at its heart, even with mentoring is great for passing on the benefits of your experience, but mentoring is only half the story. Mentoring involves coaching and mentoring, because also you want the person to develop themselves. So there's lots of tools and strategies, because that's all we're talking about, strategies, to enable that to happen. So you're in the right place. Thank you. Here's another thing which is important in terms of understanding the structure of coaching, so that we know what to put all of these fantastic skills into. This is from a model by Tenenbaum and Schmidt. And if you imagine that, just to explain the differences in terms of not only within coaching, but coaching from other things. So if you have this kind of idea, over this side of the board, we're talking about being very directive. This is directive. Yep. So we are directing a lot what's going on. Over here, it's non-directive. We're not telling. Over here, we're telling. And it's a continuum. Over here, we have consulting. Here, we have mentoring. And here, we have coaching. This area here is effectively how much the client speaks. This area here is how much you speak. client speaks. So over here, that's you as the coach. If you're a consultant, that's very different. And if you're a mentor, that's very different too. Does that make sense? So coaching is about asking great questions, not just about asking questions, asking great questions. There's a difference. Questions with a meaning and a purpose and a criteria, strategic questions, are very different from just questions. And we'll look at questions, and questions are a huge part of the training as well. How do you ask great questions? Does that help as well, just to put that in perspective of what coaching is, as opposed to things like mentoring and consulting? Yep. So we have these shapes. These shapes. Any questions on that?